Morning, Mr. Gleason.
Morning, Bill. Have a moment to spare?
Always for you. Car giving you trouble?
Well, not exactly trouble. It just doesn't seem to have the old snap, you know. A little rough at low speeds.
Doesn't sound too serious.
Okay, welcome to the exciting underworld of a 48 Chevy. It's pretty close quarters and pretty gritty down here, but hopefully we can make a decent video out of it. What I'm going to be doing is replacing the bushing and seal on the front of the drive shaft, what in the manual they call the propeller shaft, what most people these days call the drive shaft. And you need to be sure every time you have the transmission out of one of these cars to replace that seal, because that seal is the only thing that keeps gear oil in the back of the transmission, that keeps this universal joint lubricated. If that seal goes out around the shaft, then all your gear oil is going to go to your differential, and then this will dry out and go out on you. So we're going to replace that. Now, obviously I already have the engine and transmission pulled out, so we'll take it from there. This is the flange, the lock ring, or the flange that goes around the ball. This is the ball. This is the only pivot point on this drive shaft. It is a straight shaft to the pinion gear. And so they had to come up with a way for it to flex between this and the transmission. And so they seal a ball. Okay, so I have that. Now we're going to push the ball back a little bit, as far as I can. Now this is the, whoop, there it goes. These are what they call trunnions in the manual. Another place you may have heard the term trunnion is on a cannon. Pretend this is the barrel of a cannon. These would be the two trunnions on the side of the barrel that let you change elevation. So that's why they call those trunnions. This is the front yoke. I pulled these out to pull the transmission. Two bolts would have gone towards the camera here. So we're going to pull that out and we'll clean that up. And there we see our seal and a good shot of the propeller shaft. Now I'll go ahead and pull the ball. Ew. There's a paper shim. When we're all done, when I get the transmission back in and I put this back together, you adjust how tight the ball is to the back of the transmission using paper shims. And here's the flange. I forget what they call it exactly in the book. We'll get that all cleaned up too. And now there should be a dowel pin on here somewhere locking this old bushing. There's a hole right up there, so that must be it. That locks the bushing in place. The new bushing we're putting in is called an Okie bushing because of its origins from Oklahoma. This is an Okie bushing remover tool. Any parts supply where you can get an Okie bushing, they usually have these for sale, or you can rent them with a deposit. So we're going to slide that in there. Okay, so I'm getting ready to go in with the new bushing. There's the seal on the back end. And I don't want to put it in dry, so I'm going to put a little gear oil on my finger. Wipe it in there. Get the seal good. Get the bushings good. Okay. And then in the manual or instructions, they say they say put it in with white lead on the outside. Well, my parts store doesn't stock white lead anymore for some reason, so I'm going to put anti-seize on it. Should work just as well. I'm mainly going to get the parts that aren't turned down as small, because that's where it's going to rub or touch. Okay, that is Permatex anti-seize. Start that on there. So we developed a little bit of a situation here. When I tried driving the new one in, this raised knurled piece would not go past, looked like a little raised section inside the tube. And when you compare it with the old one, it is quite a bit different. There is a bit of a difference here too. It is raised on the old one, so I need to double check and see if that'll fit also. But I'm clearly going to have to turn this down to match this in order to get it in. My little mini lathe, it's just barely chucks up, so I think I'm going to take it to work on the big lathe and get it turned down to where it needs to go.
Not only does it take specialized equipment, it takes precision parts if you're to be guaranteed prompt, efficient service.
Ew, seriously? That is so gross.
Okay, so at this point, everything is cleaned up, ready to go. The bushing on the inside of the torque tubes are replaced. The seal is in there, so it will not leak on the inside. Now we need to address leaks on the outside. Unfortunately, I cannot reinstall this until I get the engine and transmission back in the car. And I won't get the engine and transmission back in the car until I clean up and paint the inside of the engine bay. So those will be my next two projects: the engine bay, install engine and transmission, and then I will finish installing this. And if you need to do one of these, you need to get, this is from Best Gasket 5151. It comes with the shim pack and the two gaskets you need for the external sealing of the ball around the torque tube. If you have a ball that looks really messed up on the outside where these two overlap, then this has been adjusted way too tight, and whenever the car goes over a bump, it's been gouging the metal off the ball. That's a sure sign it hasn't been shimmed right with the shim pack. Or if you put oil in the back end of the transmission and it just runs out of here, specifically here it's not adjusted tight enough, and here if it's coming out of there, you'll just need to replace the felt shim in there. So another thing to check out before you go back together is if your U-joint needs to be replaced. Mine looks really good, so it's probably been done in the past. So I will get those two other things checked off the list, and then I will get back and bring you along when I finish this up. Oh, and one other quick thing. If you remember when I was first pulling out the old Okie bushing, I mentioned a dowel pin. If your bushing has never been replaced before, so it does not have an Okie bushing in it, has the original OEM bushing in it yet, there'll be a dowel pin in there. And you have to get that out in order to move that old bushing. Now, when you install an Okie bushing for the first time on a car, you can just push the Okie bushing in and keep shoving that factory bushing down farther into the torque tube. That's the recommended procedure. Now, there may still be a dowel in there with an Okie bushing if the Okie bushing wanted to spin inside the torque tube if it wasn't quite tight enough. Ours had been replaced and there was no dowel in the hole, so I was able to just pull it out without removing the dowel. That's why I didn't show that. And obviously the new one we put in went in nice and snug, so I didn't have to worry about finding a dowel to put in there. So that's what that's all about. Please join us for the next installment of working on this great car. Thank you.
Shall I put it on your account?
No, it isn't much. I think I'll pay cash this time.